Welcome, everyone, to the Notre Dame Six Pack, where we take six Notre Dame sports topics, take 6 minutes to discuss each of them with our blue and gold beat writers, Tyler Horka and Jack Soble. Lots to discuss today. Really looking forward to today's show. Folks, please hit the thumbs up on this video. Subscribe to the Blue and Gold YouTube channel for more content. Of course, blueandgold.com is your home for all things Notre Dame, Fighting Irish football, basketball, baseball, recruiting, the whole 9 yards. Boys, I trust that you are well. You guys got to see some Notre Dame practice today, spoke with some coaches and players, and we're going to discuss that and more in today's show. So let's go ahead and just dive into it. The Jeremiyah Love at receiver. I think this was one of the bigger talking points from the limited practice viewing that you guys got today. Is it something? Is it nothing? Jack, we'll start with you.
So, I mean, it's something, but it's nothing new, if that makes sense. Like we went through this. Oh, I'm gone now. There we go. We went through this last year. As I think Tyler, you said in your article and on the message board, like no one thought, and if you did, you weren't paying attention, that Love was going to move to wide receiver last year, because both he and I think Dylan McCullough at the time said, like, no, he's still a running back. He's just working on some of his wide receiver routes, like running routes out of the slot, running go routes from the outside, because those are things that they could have him do in the game. And they did. They split him out wide and ran tunnel screens with him last year a bunch. They ran counters off of that. I think if Love was healthy, he might have been the one splitting out wide and catching a 36-yard pass in the Orange Bowl instead of Aeneas Williams. But he wasn't. So Williams, who's obviously an excellent pass catching back, did that. The deal is, we talked to Juwan Sider on Friday, and I think it was Friday. And he said that Love is like the best route running back he's ever been around. And I think Notre Dame needs to use him more as a pass catcher, not necessarily even the slaughter out wide, out of the backfield too, than they did last year. And I think they will. I think that's one of the next steps for Jeremiyah Love after his tremendous sophomore year. So no, in Love's last year with the team, what will almost certainly be Love's last year with the team, he's not going to play wide receiver. But to use him as just a running back would be a disservice to him and his massive talent.
Yeah, I think this is about Notre Dame going pretty much 3 seasons without a pass-catching game from its backfield. So I looked at some numbers and I went back to 2021 and 2020 as well. Kyren Williams had 42 catches in 2021. If you gave... So Jeremiyah Love had 28 last year, for reference. If you gave Jeremiyah Love 14 more opportunities, or not even opportunities, he's not going to catch every single pass that comes his way. So if he gets 14 more catches, I think he does something special in those 14 catches. So it's about getting him the ball in a different manner. And speaking of a different manner, I think you need to give Jeremiyah Love an opportunity to be an extension of the running game, even though he's a running back. Like, you don't have to hand him the ball every single time, or you don't have to toss it to him every single time. Notre Dame is going to have an offense that is more predicated upon the passing game than it had last year. That's just is what it is. Riley Leonard, you don't have that guy to run the ball 100 and whatever times he ran the ball. So I don't think those 100 and whatever carries that Leonard had last year are all going to be, here you go, Jeremiyah Love, here you go, Jadarian Price. Maybe something looks like a run. All of a sudden, Jeremiyah Love splits out wide, and then you run a little quick slant or get him the ball quickly in a manner like that. And then all of a sudden, Jeremiyah Love gets 8 yards that way instead of having to get 8 yards where, Jack, how many times do we say at the end of a game, dude, I don't know how Jeremiyah Love just got 8 yards on that play. He probably should have got 2 or maybe even -2. So give him the ball in a different situation. Let him make some plays in different ways. You let Kyren Williams do that for a couple seasons with Ian Book as the quarterback in 2020 and then Jack Cohn in 2021. Let Steve Angeli do it, or CJ Carr, Kenny Minchie, whoever it is. Toss him the ball, let him go. He's your best player. He's your best player. So get him the ball in that way. And like you were saying at the beginning, Jack, he runs very good routes. It's not surprising. He is Notre Dame's best offensive player.
And I think he can be their best weapon if they split him out wide a little bit more than they did last season and go with some of those empty sets. If a defense is playing man heavy, and again, we saw this in the Orange Bowl, you can punish a man heavy defense by splitting your running back out wide if he's fast and he runs really good routes. because chances are you're going to get a linebacker out there, and J Love on a linebacker, I'm taking J Love every single time. And I think you can create some explosive plays that way. And yeah, yes, only 28 catches. I think we have to qualify any pass catching numbers last year with low volume passing offense. He's gonna get more touches in the passing game this year just because they're probably gonna throw more. But I do like your idea about using him as an extension of the run game too. Like some of those tunnel screens, the bubble screens, the slip screens, the throwback screens that we saw him catch a touchdown on with the Louisville game in the Louisville game. Yeah, he is an outstanding football player. The more ways you can get him the ball, the better. What was the famous quote from Marcus Freeman? It's not rocket science to know that Jeremiyah Love has to get the ball. Notre Dame's offense, I think you're going to see him get the ball a little bit more downfield. I think that's one of the next steps in his game, the route running and the downfield threat.
And I don't think you're taking away from anyone else's game if you do this. Like Jadarian Price had 4 catches last year. I think that kind of we saw that Notre Dame's not going to try to get him the ball in that way. So you don't have to worry about, well, hey, we're trying to force feed Jeremiyah Love here. What about the other guys? You mentioned Aeneas Williams earlier. I don't know if they both eat in this scenario, but like, hey, at least you got 2 guys who are capable of it. Because I saw Aeneas Williams today in the practice that we saw running routes, and I'm like, okay, yeah, that's exactly what we saw in the Orange Bowl. Jawan Sider talked about what we saw in the Orange Bowl. So you got a couple different options there, but I think you could do it a couple different ways with those guys too. So everyone's going to be fixated on Love. Is he going to catch passes? But I think as a whole, you kind of started this conversation. It's more about just getting these running backs more involved in that way. Cause I've seen it on the message board for as long as I've been here. I guess ever since Kyron Williams left, it was like, hey, why can't we throw these guys the ball more? Jeremiyah Love is obviously willing and able to catch more passes.
I'd like to think if everyone fixated on Love, the world would be a better place.
That's the goal. That's the idea.
So we are a week into spring ball. You guys have got to see maybe an hour's worth of practice, which would include stretching and interviewing the quarterbacks and Gino Guidugli, and of course hearing from Marcus Freeman once. Would you say you know any more about the Notre Dame quarterback competition now than you did, before this all started, Tyler?
I would love to say yes, but the answer is probably no. We know more about the guys individually, I suppose, because we, like you said, Mike, we did get to talk to them. We got to talk to Gino Guidugli. I think Gino Guidugli let us in on more than the guys did, because the guys were all just like, I'm approaching this like, I have to every day to get better. I'm bettering myself, yada, yada, yada. But Guidugli said, Kenny Minchie's the most athletic of them. And Steve Angeli is the one that's approaching this like it's his job to lose, as he should. He is the senior. If there is an incumbent here, even though nobody started last year, he's the guy. He's played the most football for this football team. And then CJ Carr, he's that freshman or sophomore now with the moxie. Like he's the young gun. Let's call him the young gun, because it's not like he's completely out of this race. We all know he's very much in the thick of this race. And I think watching the quarterbacks, Jack, I know I've done this more than you have, so I'm interested to see if you've noticed any of this, but like he just walks around that football field. If Steve Angeli is approaching this like it's his job, then I want to know what Gino Guidugli thinks in that regard of CJ Carr, because CJ Carr just like commands, like he has a commanding presence. He has aura, if you will. That's the buzzword these days, right? You either have aura or you don't. And if you're the starting quarterback at a place like Notre Dame, you better have it, and you better have a lot of it. He's got it. So it's more than that. You got to be able to throw the football accurately to the right guy, lead a football team down the field, put points on the board, all of those different things. But he's doing the stuff in practice like you want to see it. And then if he does all that other stuff that I just said, then look, I wouldn't be shocked if that guy ends up being this team's long-term starting quarterback. But I will say it is a 3-person race. It really is truly a 3-person race. So on that note, I wouldn't be shocked if any of these 3 guys win it.
Yeah, like Tyler said, we haven't really learned anything so far this spring. Like pretty much everything we've seen is like superficial. Like obviously it matters, like how they interact with each other during warm-ups. That matters. Everything matters. But we talked to Gino Guidugli last week, and he said pretty explicitly, like quarterbacks develop during team. Like all the other stuff is great, but you need to be making decisions under fire. You need to be making decisions with guys trying to tackle you in the backfield. You need to be making decisions against an actual coverage. Like that's what this is going to come down to. Who can do that the best? We will learn more. I don't know if we're allowed to say the exact date, but we're going to see a full practice, and I believe it'll be the Jersey scrimmage because that's usually where Marcus Freeman speaks afterwards. So I believe we're going to see like a full scrimmage for Notre Dame at some point within the next 2 weeks. At which point we will learn a lot more about the quarterback competition. So no, we can say all we want about what Gino Guidugli said. We can read into every third word of that interview, but at this point, it's just kind of waiting and seeing until we actually get to see these guys live.
Yeah, I don't know if we're not allowed to say that full practice date. I don't know if it's a huge deal, but
yeah, probably.
I'm just
not.
saying if the Notre Dame women's basketball team, which we'll talk about later in this show, has a really good weekend this weekend, I might have to miss that full practice, and we might have to recruit Kyle Kelly to play Tyler Horka that day. Maybe get Todd Burlage in there. I don't know. We'll see what we can do for that full practice, but there, read between the lines. There's your timeline for that. Until then, yeah, it's like, what more can we see? Here's the thing. I would love to have seen some of the one-on-ones, Jack. Like I can't remember. Yeah. Was it last fall camp, the fall camp before that, made a spring ball? Like in the last 2 years since you've been here, we've seen some nice one-on-one stuff. And you can say, okay, who threw that? Anytime that you're asking who threw that pass, like that's when you're learning some things about quarterbacks. And that's not team, but that's one-on-one. Mike's coming in here. He's going to interrupt this.
No, I'm not. I didn't know if you needed me to, because I could interject if you guys needed me to.
Go right ahead.
No, the last thing that I was saying there is, like, I would love to have seen a truly competitive pass so far, but to all the listeners here, I'm just going to tell you outright. Gosh dang it.
All right, so I would like to call in the question. I'm only going to take like 15 seconds here. I'm going to call in the question Mark with Glass's grading system, because he said I'm not messing around today. And then exactly 1 minute later, he said I'm drinking too much water, and round one goes to Horka. So I would like to. I'm doing the rest of the show.
We can't have you cramping up. We can't have you cramping up by the end of this, man. I don't even have a water here. So if I go parched, anyway, we only have 1 minute, Mike. So you might as well. This segment's already gone off the rails.
All right, the whole don't sleep on Minchie thing. This is like a triggering thing for me these days, because like if I don't include Minchie in a thumbnail, and I have the other two quarterbacks, just because we had better pictures of the other two quarterbacks during a certain day, it's like everyone loses their mind. Mm-hmm. Do you guys think people are sleeping on Minchie? Because like do you want me? Do you guys just want us to blow smoke up your butt? Because I think he's the third. I think he's number 3. And that's just it. Like, I don't know. What do you guys want me to tell you?
I think like we have to say both sides of it. Like, yes, Minchie's a great kid. He's a talented quarterback. He's probably going to be a starter at some point. He'll get his chance. I just think, based on everything we've seen and heard over the last 2 years, that it is more likely than not that Notre Dame will go with CJ Carr or Stephen Jelly. Is what
have we definitively heard that Carr is ahead of Minchie though?
I think it's more of like a reading between the lines, or hashtag sources.
Yeah, I mean this. I don't know. Here's the thing I'll say about Kenny Minchie. It's like 2.3% of the fan base absolutely loves him and wants to start, and then whatever the math there is, 97.7 is that? Did I say 2.3? Yeah. It's like they have just totally they're kind of pushing the kid out. It feels weird. It feels weird to me.
The discourse is off the rails already. Can it please just be August 31st already?
There's like a tribal attitude. It's like a very vocal group. But anyways, okay. Speaking of vocal, we've heard since Jagusah has been in high school, like him moving to guard. I've been in I don't know what to tell you folks. Notre Dame wants him to play tackle, but he definitely, he's a freak. Like, he can play literally anywhere. So it does seem like, okay, let me frame it like this. Does it seem like he's moving to guard, or is it half of our O-line is out, like Jagusah, excuse me, like, rep at guard a little bit. Let's just see, which one is it? A little bit of both, Jack?
It feels like more the former, that Notre Dame will eventually start Jagusah at guard this fall, because like Joe Rudolph is one of the better interviews on the coaching staff, I think, because he's generally honest with you. He won't sugarcoat things. He'll say what he thinks. And like Joe Rudolph told us that he thinks Charles Jagusah can be one of the best guards in the country. Like that is strong words from a guy who does not speak in hyperbole all that much. And he said, like, based on the Penn State tape, you know, it's hard, Joe Rudolph said, for an offensive lineman to jump off the tape because it's all five working as one. That's the whole game on the offensive line. But for one guy like Charles Jagusah to jump off the tape like he did against Penn State at guard, that got Joe Rudolph thinking like, okay, him and Billy Schrouth, who like Billy Schrouth isn't really practicing right now, but like, let's not forget about him because he's appearing on some preseason All-American lists as like a second team guy. Like Jagusah and Schrouth can be one of the best IOL duos in the country. And I think Notre Dame has enough at tackle to be able to figure out the rest. And speaking of tackle, like, I don't know if we should save this for more on the O-line, but like, I'll actually save the details for the next section, but like Joe Rudolph also indicated that Anthony Knapp is more likely to stick at tackle long-term than many of us think. And that he thought when Knapp came into the program. So all that together makes me think like, oh, Jagusah is destined for guard long term, and Notre Dame's really excited about that.
Yeah, for sure. Here's the thing. I'm gonna take this from the top with the way Mike kind of presented this segment. It doesn't even really feel like Jagusah is moving to guard. I get it. We've seen him play the most at left tackle, but that was one game in was it the bowl game a couple of years ago, and then when he started the national championship game, right? It's like it's two starts in his career, and then you have that entire gap last year where, let's face it, when you're coming back from the injury that he was coming back from, he's taking mental reps in practices, but he's not repping at tackle. So at that point, he's not even really a tackle to me. I guarantee you he was like, what does a quarterback do when he gets hurt? We saw the Tyler Buckner thing a few years ago. He's up in the booth with Tommy Rees, and he's observing the entire offense, and he's taking notes on everything. He's charting plays. I guarantee you Jagusah was charting everything that went into the offensive line operation for that entire season last fall. And part of him was probably thinking, yeah, I could probably play some guard. And Scooby-Doo is on here saying a Quentin Nelson type. Yeah, you look at Quentin Nelson, you're like, yeah, he's big enough to play tackle for sure. Charles Jagusah, 6'7", 320, I think he's listed at on this spring roster. Everything about him screams tackle. But you have, Scooby-Doo in here also saying he would be a straight bully at guard. I agree with that too. So, and then you listen, I'm glad you brought up what Joe Rudolph said about him. Is like, he's just a dang good football player. And you could play him anywhere. Probably not center, because you want to be able to move him around a little bit more and whatnot. But anywhere you put him, it's going to work. So I don't even really classify this as a move to guard. It's like a rebranding almost. And heck, man, if a year from now they need him to play tackle again for some crazy unforeseen reason that I don't see, because this team is loading up on tackles, and we're going to talk about that in the more on the offensive line segment. He could do that too. But right now, yeah, I think it makes sense, because Emil Wagner is going to start at tackle. And then again, we're kind of combining these two segments, but we're going to talk about some other guys that could play tackle. But right now, Charles Jagusah at guard, I love it. And seeing what I saw today with him teaming up with Gerby Lambert, like, dude, if that's the guy that you've got playing guard, that's an offensive line that when you hop off the bus and the other team sees you, or the opposing team's media sees you, you start rethinking the game. You're like, that guy's going to play right guard? Who's going to play tackle? Holy cow, we're up against it. I think I really love this rebranding, I'll call it, for Jagusah.
I love the phrase rebranding like he's an Instagram influencer. But
that's the age we live in, baby.
No, so I would actually classify this as a move, because, like, yes, he was hurt for a season, but from the start of bowl practice 2023 in December to the day he got hurt, Notre Dame thought he was their best offensive tackle. So I think it is significant that they're now apparently moving him to guard. But like, I like the point you made about his attitude. Like, yes, he's got the body type of a tackle, but like what you want in a guard, you want that nastiness, and you want that in a tackle too. but it's generally seen as a more technical position. Like
Right.
not saying Jagusah is not technical, but the nastiness he plays with is really, 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 really good. Like he wants to bury you when he's out there, and you saw a lot of that during the Penn State game. There was a clip where like Notre Dame got tackled for loss and like watching the clip, it was like, oh, Jagusah got his assignment wrong, but he got his assignment wrong and still buried a defensive back on his back. Like that's what an offensive line coach wants to see. Like you don't want to see him miss an assignment, but if you do miss it at full speed and teach some poor defensive back a lesson, like that is the mindset Jagusah plays with. I think with a full offseason, and again, Billy Schrauth on the other side, who really has that mindset too, is like that. That's a really exciting prospect for Notre Dame.
Now, if they could all just stay healthy, and we'll talk about that next.
It's a large if, yes.
Tyler, I was editing the videos that you recorded today from practice, and obviously recorded the video that you guys shot afterwards. And it seemed like there's definitely some other O-line things to discuss, or that you kind of learned about that weren't regarding Charles. So, what else did you learn? Especially, the Styles Prescott thing was fascinating because when he committed to Notre Dame and that 24 class, it was like, all right, nice take, but like it felt like we didn't know a ton about him. Whereas like Gerby Lambert's this freak show offensive tackle, we know about him, but with Prescott, just an interesting take out of the Indy area. So he was injured. Hearing his name more, I find intriguing. What else do we kind of learn about the O-line? So going to potential starters to, down the depth chart, guys. Tyler?
Yeah, let's start with the tackles because that's where you were kind of going with that. Here's the thing. Emil Wagner, we saw him riding the bike pretty much the entire practice for the time that we were out there. Anthony Knapp is also limited. So there's the guys that started pretty much all 16 games. Wagner 16 of 16, Knapp 15 of 16. They're out. What are you going to do? Gerby Lambert is the obvious choice to fill in, and he's been repping pretty much at right tackle from what we've seen, but he's bouncing around from what Joe Rudolph said. And then somebody's got to, if you're going to line up 5 across and you don't have Wagner or you don't have Knapp, somebody's got to go over there and play left tackle. And that's been Styles Prescott. And you've listened to his teammates today talk very highly of him. Joe Rudolph talk very highly of him. So all of a sudden you're kind of in a situation where you don't know for sure who's starting at tackle right now because everyone seems to want to push Knapp out of there. But then Rudolph kind of pushes back on that and says, hey, we had a guy start all 15 games as a true freshman, get us all the way to the national championship game. Not all the way through that Orange Bowl, but he started that one too. Why would we move off of that? And so Rudolph is basically telling us to read between the lines. Anthony Knapp could still be this team's left tackle. Emil Wagner did everything to be this team's right tackle. That's kind of why you've seen Charles Jagusah say, hey, if that's what you like, then let me play guard because I could probably play guard as well as, if not better than anyone you got there right now. So, Jack, I don't know where you're going with this, but Ashton Craig, I still think is this team's best center. If you get him back healthy, you got to start him. Your other options there, Joe Otting.
Well, still an Absher based on what we've learned so far in the spring.
Right, but that kind of feels Andrew Kristofic to me in the sense that, like, I think Jarrett Patterson went down a couple of off seasons ago, and Andrew Kristofic was like, let me snap, let me do this. And that's Sullivan Absher saying that because, like, he sees it too. There's guys at every single position. He just wants to play. You don't have a center right now, and he's like, let me snap. So, but hey, if he evolves into, we could spin this conversation to Absher because I think he is phenomenal. If all of a sudden he's like a diamond in the rough, light bulb moment type of center, and he's there, I guess that pushes Craig out. But like, there's where we're at, right, Jack? Like the great problem to have is that there are so many guys, and you can only really lock a couple of them in. And there's some people on our message board saying that Emil Wagner's not even locked in. It's like, hey, Gerby Lambert's probably knocking on his door. So it's a phenomenal position to be in, but it still causes some stress because Joe Rudolph still has to choose 5 guys.
Well, I will go on record and say that the people who are saying Emil Wagner's not locked in are wrong. Because he's absolutely going to start. Billy Schrauth is absolutely going to start. I feel very comfortable saying Charles Jagusah is going to start. I don't know if I would say he's like, I would say he's more 95%, whereas Shrouth and Wagner are 100%.
Okay.
But I want to circle back to Knapp, because what Joe Rudolph said was super interesting. He said, and I quote, I got it pulled up. Coming in, I thought he would factor more at internal positions like center or guard. But when he comes in, he was just so natural playing out there, and he's got really good length. The average tackle height is 6'5" in the NFL. It's not 6'8". That's the outlier. Saying basically like, yeah, Knapp is 6'4", but he like 6'3" or 6'4", I think. But that's not crippling for a tackle. He just really does some things that helped us and gave us some strength, power, and consistency there. We thought he played really well, so we'll see. But he does have some flexibility as well. But yeah, like I now feel pretty confident that after hearing that Anthony Knapp has a better chance to stick at tackle than I think any of us thought coming in. And like, yes, Knapp took his lumps his freshman year. Of course he would. Anyone expecting otherwise was unrealistic, but like he held his own and he showed some really promising signs, especially in the run game. I think he was a good to great run blocker by the end of the season at that left tackle spot. He still, I think, struggled against some of the top competition pass blocking, but that's where a full off season of work in a Notre Dame weight room comes in. And obviously the ankle is a bit of a hindrance, but I think he should be good by the end of spring ball from everything we've been told. So I think right now, if I had to guess, I would say a starting line is Knapp, Shrouth, Craig, Jagusah, Wagner. We don't know for sure, but reading in between the lines of what Rudolph said, that's our guess. I also want to talk about Styles Prescott, because again, he's someone who I don't think was really present in our offensive line conversations throughout the offseason. But I asked Bryce Young, like, hey, who are some of the tackles who are stepping up? Because Knapp is not practicing too much. Wagner's not practicing too much. And he said, like, yeah, it's a Styles Prescott. Prescott was the first name he mentioned. He mentioned Lambert too, but Prescott was the first name. And he said he's having a good spring so far. And I asked Joe Rudolph about him as well, and he said he's flashed. And you could see him do some really good things. He missed the fall season with shoulder surgery, but he's a guy who, like Mike said, has some intriguing traits for an offensive tackle. And again, like you said, Tyler, this team just has a lot of tackles in the pipeline. It's interesting to see who emerges, but I wouldn't be so quick to Sharpie and Lambert into the lineup, because, like, yes, he was a higher ranked recruit than Anthony Knapp. But Anthony Knapp has played. Anthony Knapp has some really good traits for that tackle spot. So it's going to be really hard to supplant him at that left tackle spot.
I would say I'm going to let that bell go off. Here might be a hot take, though. Sullivan Absher might have a higher probability of starting somewhere than Gerby Lambert. You guys agree?
No, because I think they see Absher as more of a guard, and based on what we heard today, I think those spots are pretty locked down by Jagusah and Shrouth.
I'm saying Absher might unseat Craig if he uses his time wisely here.
Okay, yeah.
That could be a thing.
So
it's like we haven't seen Craig play football in so long. I forget how good he is. Like, my mind tries to tell me that he's really good, but we haven't seen it in a while.
Who plays center?
We're seeing it with Absher right now.
So Absher plays center?
He could.
6'8"? A 6'8" center?
Hey, man, go against the grain.
You got a 6'4" tackle.
6'8".
That's why, but that's
center.
That's why I was saying, though, the Absher thing at center does feel a little Kristofic-y to me. Remember, I think it was Andrew Kristofic who was like, Jarrett Patterson's out, let me snap because you need help. I think that's what Sullivan Absher is doing here, but you can't dismiss what Rudolph has said about Absher. I think he's a utility man.
So today just like a Jason Onyé love fest? That seemed like everyone's very happy about the return of Jason Onyé and his progress, Jack.
Yeah, Washington is, and Tyler, actually, you wrote about him today, so I'll let you start.
Yeah, so I think Al Washington got like 5 questions about Jason Onyé, a couple about football, one about just like the development that he's gone through since he got here a handful of years ago now, and then another about his weight. Let's start there. He's 308 pounds on the roster, and Al Washington flat out said, yeah, I think that's the heaviest that I've ever seen him at, and he said it's good weight. Like, there's a difference there. I think I did make the joke the other day that, like, all weight for defensive tackles is good weight because you just want to be as big as you can, and I'm going to get to that if you allow me to talk about somebody else later on in this segment. But right now about Anye, it's good weight because Washington says he's still as quick as he was, and he's always been a super athletic guy. You look at him and you're like, okay, yeah, that guy can move, but he's got the strength too. So really good football player. And then everything about the off-field stuff, which we can't say too much about, but I will say without oversharing, it was a pretty serious personal situation that led him to a not so great emotional space. And, you know, like it or not, and I do like it, like we need to be mindful of that, not just about student athletes at Notre Dame, but about your friends and your family and everyone that you're close to or anyone that you meet on the street. Like, you got to be aware that these people are going through something. And Jason Anye was going through something, and he made it back. And Al Washington said today he might start for this football team because those spots are up in the air. I think we talked about it on last week's six-pack show. You got to choose 4 or 5 of these guys probably, but you're not sure how those puzzle pieces fit. And Anye, he could rise to the top and be a starter. So the fact that he is at that position, Al Washington said today, like, I love that kid. I've seen him go through his personal strife. I've seen him make it back here. And he said he's going to be his friend for life. And so, yeah, Mike, it was a love fest, but it felt genuine and sincere as well. So pretty cool to see this guy who's kind of been waiting for a moment like this, a moment to be a dude, the guy in the middle of the Notre Dame defensive line. He went through his personal stuff, and now he might have that opportunity.
It's been clear for a couple of years, but never more so than now how badly Al Washington wants to see Jason Anye to succeed. And I think that's absolutely what you want in a position coach player relationship, because like he truly cares about that kid. And if everything goes well from here on out, like you said, Tyler, is a serious situation. But it is great, obviously great to see him back out there and apparently doing well. I want to talk about the edge rushers for a sec, because I think we learned something pretty interesting today, that a wrinkle Chris Ash has put in that the defensive ends, the Vipers and DEs are kind of splitting out wider in certain situations. And that was instead of when you have a tight end on the strong side, instead of a 6-eye, which is your the inside shade of the tight end, they're lining up in a 7 technique, which is the outside shade of the tight end. And it's interesting, very football nerdy, but it allows the defensive ends to be more playmakers than they might have been in last year's system. Chris Ash worked with the Raiders for a couple of years. He wasn't the D-line coach, but I think he showed some of the guys' film of Max Crosby. So Jordan Botelho said, kind of making plays off the edge. It just gives you a little more freedom. Bryce Young said he's excited about that. And I like that, especially because I think that, like, again, if everyone is healthy, this is a really good group of edge rushers Notre Dame has. And I thought that was an interesting wrinkle we heard. Other than that, pretty standard stuff about the D-line. I think obviously not much more about Traore and Botelho. We know their status right now. Washington said Bryce Young is a beast, which again we already knew. Emil Wagner told me and another reporter that he's got all-American potential, with which again we knew. Josh Burnham can play both Viper and defensive end, was what Washington said about his position, which is always good. You want versatility. But no, there's again, what we're gonna say all offseason. There's a few questions this defensive line has to answer. They answer most of them in the affirmative. This is a really good group.
Yeah, last thing I'll say on the defensive ends is Logan Thomas is kind of battling the Emil Wagner syndrome, where he just needs to get bigger and he doesn't know how. Like, he said he tried the McDonald's diet and that wasn't working. So now he's on chicken and rice, doubling up on all that and stuff. So he needs to get bigger and he knows it. That's the only way he's going to get on the football field. And I'm a fan of that guy. So, like, get bigger, man, and we'll see you play. Somebody who is already big, Sean Sevillano. And Al Washington was asked about him at the end of his press conference. And I'm just going to preface this with this. Sometimes you hear the coach speak about someone who's 3-4 deep on the depth chart. And then sometimes a coach will bring up like actual anecdotes that lead you to believe that this guy might be something at some point. This is what Al Washington said about Sean Sevillano. He's a different body type. He's tough to move. Last year, I think he was Scout Team Player of the Year. You look at him on the scout team, the coaches are praising him. Joe Rudolph is coming over. Coach Freeman is like, man, Sean. So, yeah, I've got a high expectation. And then he gets into his role. He's strong. He's smart. That's more than coach speak. This is like specific stuff. And I've said it all along. Notre Dame has a guy in Sean Sevillano that doesn't look like anybody else on the roster. By way of that, he probably doesn't play like anybody else on the roster. He's young, so that's why he's not playing right now. But once he gets to a point of playing, and if he gets to that point, he might be a pretty good player. It sounds like that could be the case.
I'm gonna play through the whistle here real quick. One quick note about Logan Thomas. Like while we thought over the offseason that like he could be a breakout guy, like he does not have to be. Like Notre Dame has plenty at Viper between Tui Halamaka and Traore and Botello and Burnham can play on that side, and I'm sure Bryce Young could play there if they wanted him to. So they do not need anything from him this year. So he can take another developmental special teams year if he needs.
And I took a lot of time to talk to Botello today, and he's sounding great, sounds confident. Would not be surprised if he's the same guy that he was prior to that injury.
Tyler, tell us about the women's basketball team, man.
Yeah, here we go. This has been the ceiling for this team, and it's been an unsatisfactory ceiling for Niele Ivory the last 3 years. The Sweet 16, that's what we're talking about. Notre Dame is in that against TCU. Look, you can't tell me that the committee doesn't come up with storylines when they're selecting this tournament field, because what Notre Dame has to do to get past the Sweet 16, like I said, they haven't been able to do since Niele Ivey took over as head coach, is beat a team that it did not beat in the Cayman Islands some 4 months ago. I guess that was now at the end of November. TCU Horned Frogs. TCU rapid rise at the end of the year. They only end up losing 3 games all year. So it ends up being a good loss for Notre Dame, but so good that TCU gets the 2 seed and Notre Dame gets the 3. I said it on the message board though, Jack, like if you were always going to be in the same region as TCU, doesn't matter if you're the 2 or the 3, you're going to have to go through them anyway. So that's what the matchup is. And then probably the Elite 8 matchup, if you get through that one, is a team that you also already played before. As Mike's in the background, the clock is not ticking. But I could talk about the women's basketball team all day if need be, but just alerting him to that. It's Texas waiting in the Elite 8 probably. That is a team that Notre Dame beat. But, Jack, I'm curious, like, we can just have a free-flowing conversation as opposed to me just talking about all this. Like, what do you think of the rematch angles here? Do you like that Notre Dame is trying to get revenge against TCU? Are you worried that Texas would be trying to get revenge against Notre Dame? Does any of that matter? How do you kind of see that? I know you're a hoops guy.
Yeah, it kind of depends on the team. I think like they'll probably tell you that the revenge game angle isn't too prominent. Like certainly if Marcus Freeman ran the team, he'd tell you, they're just worried about the opportunity. And I think Niele Ivey and Marcus Freeman are obviously close. I can't say I know too much about TCU and Texas. I mean, I know about their stars, Haley Benlith on TCU, Madison Booker on Texas. Obviously, we've talked about it. Like Madison Booker is really, really, really good forward. Notre Dame's weakness is the front court. So I think honestly, like it just kind of depends on does Notre Dame play to its potential. Like I don't know how convinced you are, Tyler, about that the first 2 games have been Notre Dame at its full potential just because of the opponent, or like can they sustain that against better competition? So I'm curious your thoughts on like, are the problems that we saw late in the season fixed?
That first quarter that Notre Dame played against Michigan, they play like that. I think they're the best team in the country. So the way that they offset their weakness is to run. And Niele Ivey was adamant about saying the way that we can run is if we play good defense. You weren't getting that good defense in the losses down the stretch. I mean, heck, you gave up mid-80s in regulation to NC State, mid-80s in a regulation loss to Florida State. The Duke game, you were like, okay, why is she talking about defense? But that was just like a yucky game. And yeah, I guess they didn't play enough defense because they weren't running. So TCU, Texas, they both have very good post play, but Notre Dame can get around that if somehow they get good stops. They're not getting abused in the post and they get out and they run, the pressure and whatnot. So yeah, if Notre Dame plays like it did against Michigan, I think it can beat both of these teams. It would probably have to beat South Carolina in the Final Four. That's getting way ahead of ourselves. But to answer your question, Jack, I saw enough there in the opening weekend of the tournament to say, okay, national championship back on. Like let's match up this Notre Dame team against any other team, and that's what it was in December. So they got back to who they are, which is very encouraging and enlightening. Now I'm going to ask you, who is Notre Dame men's basketball? Are they going to get to something that that they need to be? Because Notre Dame women's basketball is that right now. What about the men?
We shall see based on how the next month goes. Step one, we believe is that they will retain Marcus Burton. That is the current belief, and I again, you have to qualify everything by saying the transfer portal is still open for another month. Things can change, minds can change, anything can happen. But we believe Marcus Burton will remain with Notre Dame for another season. You can check out more of that reporting at blueandgold.com. Notre Dame is very involved in, again, I don't want to spoil too much of the premium reporting, but by myself and Jamie Shaw have reported that Notre Dame is very involved with two of the top 30 transfers in the portal, big man from the Mountain West and a guard from the Horizon League, both of whom were among the best players in their conference last year. One confirmed visit to Notre Dame. One believe Notre Dame's going to get him on campus. I think I'll play for the whistle here again a little bit more. I think there's going to be a lot of competition for these guys. I would say Notre Dame's probably cautiously optimistic about the big men, which they badly need. About the state of the program, ask me in a month for what I think, and ask me in 12 months for what I know. It's the prove it year. It is the year where Notre Dame's got to construct a roster that makes sense, and it's the year where they got to win some basketball games.
Hey man, if Notre Dame women's basketball loses in the Sweet 16 for a fourth straight year, I'm gonna have as many angry people in my mentions and on the board as you've got, just for different reasons. So we'll see. Like Mark with Glasses said, 1 Eastern on Saturday. That's a big one. You get through that one, then you're on the door of the Final Four for the first time in half a dozen years. That's pretty exciting.
Folks, that is the Notre Dame six-pack show where the guys take 6 topics and 6 minutes on each of them, break them all down. So some good stuff today. So if you're just tuning in, rewind, watch the beginning of the show, and you can see Tyler's still a little bit better, but uneven on hoodie strings. Please hit the thumbs up on the video if you have not done so yet. Appreciate you all for tuning in, and we will catch you next time.